us. They've been said by many, many people in many, many ways. When Martin Luther King Jr. talked about what he called the madness of militarism in 1967, he may as well have been talking about the madness of militarism in 2013, because that madness is with us just as much today. When Nobel-winning biologist George Wald spoke in 1969 at MIT across the river from his Harvard, and when he said that it is the business of our government to kill, that our government is, as he put it, in the business of killing, that also is true today. And for us to pretend otherwise, to float along on the fairy tale, to believe that we don't live in a warfare state or a surveillance state, is to enable the deception that's being used by the corporate mass media and the elected and appointed officials in Washington. And because we care about the Bill of Rights, because we understand that lives are in the balance and the future has to be fought for, we're going to organize, and we're going to fight like hell.
So now we have individual questions for each of the panelists, and they have 10 minutes. And one of the sub-questions of this 10-minute frame here is, what can we do? And so I'm going to pose the first question to Nadia. So you're going to cover surveillance, and your specific question is, what sorts of action can people take, especially at the local level, to combat these national and international issues? So.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm sure many people here have been involved in organizing, and I want to encourage everybody who is involved in organizing to treat each other well. Now, that sounds like something small, but how many people here have sat through a 3-hour meeting where people were griping at each other, not taking each other seriously? Right, and this is basically why I'm on this panel, is to talk about this. Not to talk about treating each other well, but to talk about organizing. And we know that there are a lot of pitfalls, but I want to focus on the positives. And one of those is actually seeing these issues as interconnected while not feeling overwhelmed. It is very easy to look at the banking crisis, to look at your community trying to purchase drones, to look at people being deported from this country at record rates, to look at the surveillance that's going on by the NSA, to look at all these things and feel overwhelmed, and to maybe pick a sub-issue and feel like that's the most important thing. But I'm here to say that all of these things are connected. And I would encourage everybody in their organizing to treat it that way. And that means working, thinking outside the box and working with each other in ways that you might not have normally. So I just want to talk about a couple of case studies, and then maybe if I have time, I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean. So we have members of a couple of groups that Bill of Rights Defense Committee has worked with here tonight. We have members of the Coalition for Safe Berkeley and the San Francisco 99% Coalition. Could you maybe just raise your hands? Not to embarrass you, but and I guess just a little bit about my organization. The Bill of Rights Defense Committee is a national organization, but our focus is on doing this grassroots activism. As I mentioned, the things that we're concerned about, a lot of them are coming from the local level, but you are far more likely in your day-to-day life to encounter an Oakland police officer or a Berkeley police officer than you are to encounter an FBI agent, unless perhaps you're Mr. Ellsberg, but the point being that local law enforcement is very much involved in this surveillance as well. And what can you do when things are very far away, they seem very hard to change? You start at the bottom. That is what has always worked. And you start by cutting the feet off of the surveillance giant. And that's happening at the local level. So I just want to talk about these case studies really briefly. I mentioned San Francisco. So in San Francisco, a huge coalition came together. It was a very diverse group. It was based on the San Francisco 99% Coalition. They were the first people who started advocating around the NDAA. And of course, they were going to do visits with Senator Feinstein. She was not necessarily receptive all the time. And they decided to go local. So they worked with the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and they got a resolution passed in San Francisco making it the policy of San Francisco not to comply with indefinite military detention. And I want to say that that matters because for anybody here who knows the story of Fred Korematsu, he was arrested by local law enforcement, and he was held at 850 Bryant before he was shipped off to an internment camp. So it does matter what your local law enforcement is doing. It does matter what your policy is in your city or in your state. And that coalition that worked on that, as I said, based on the San Francisco 90% Coalition, but a lot of groups joined. The Japanese American Citizens League, the National Lawyers Guild, Council on American Islamic Relations. It was people from a huge array of communities that supported that resolution. And for those who don't know, AB 351 in California actually just passed out of the House nearly unanimously. There was one vote against it. And this is a bill that makes it the policy of the state of California not to comply with indefinite military detention. And again, we know that that matters in California because California has a history of internment, and this is not just a policy. It actually makes it it adds to the penal code here in the state. So it means the state officials can't comply. And again, we know that when we're seeing this kind of suppression of political speech, when we're seeing surveillance, that local and state officials do assist in it. And I just want to again put in the plug. So AB 351 was sponsored by a very, very conservative member of the House. He has policies that I personally absolutely find abhorrent. But what happened is that as it was going through the more progressive, it went through the Public Safety Committee, who Amiano is the chair of, and the people who went and spoke in favor of it were speaking in favor of the policy, not the person who put forth the policy. And I know that right now with this conversation about the NSA and PRISM, we're hearing some of the strongest voices from people who we might not want to work with. And I would just encourage people to think about where the similarities are and not necessarily the differences. It has yet to go through the Senate, and I can almost guarantee you that the governor, he really loves vetoing things like the Trust Acts last year. So I would strongly encourage you I actually have sign-up sheets outside for BORDC, and Art over there has sign-in sheets as well. If you want to get updates on what's happening with that, or get involved in any of the local groups that I'm mentioning, please sign up. So the other success story that BORDC had the honor to be involved with was here in Berkeley, actually, the Coalition for Safe Berkeley, and I think I saw Sharon back there. I don't know if maybe she sat down. The Coalition for Safe Berkeley, again, it's a very diverse group of people. So it includes National Lawyers Guild, NAACP, FMLN, which is a Salvadorian political party. It's people with varying interests, but what they did is they came together around a set of policy reforms with the Berkeley City Council. So they weren't just fighting for a change in the Secure Communities detainer policy, which would make it so that Berkeley Police Department isn't helping to deport people from this community. They were arguing for that. They were also asking for a change in criminal intelligence gathering policy so the Berkeley Police Department wouldn't be infiltrating protests and, again, passing on information that would probably get to the FBI. They also organized around the Berkeley Police Department trying to get an armored vehicle. Did anybody hear about that? Right. Which, by the way, is money that comes from the federal government and encourages all sorts of ridiculous equipment purchases, such as drones in Alameda County, because that's exactly what we need to solve crime problems in Alameda County, right, is a drone. So they came together around these policies, and then they also came together around a policy that that affected the way that Berkeley Police Department would share information with the Fusion Center. And again, the Fusion Center here in California, in Northern California, it's the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, so the Fusion Center, again, shares information with the FBI, shares information with the IRS, it shares information with immigration, and the way that that information is gathered right now is this completely made up, really non-legal standard. It's a set of behaviors that are supposedly indicative of pre-operational planning. And you can ask any attorney who's familiar with these standards, they're legal garbage. They don't mean anything. The legal standards that we have are probable cause and reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. These are not those standards, and they allow law enforcement to write down what people are doing and then share this information with a database that is then shared across the country. So the Coalition for Safe Berkeley changed the policy here in the city of Berkeley, and now, in order to transmit information to the Fusion Center, the Berkeley Police Department has to actually have reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Now, that sounds small, but I want to tell you that the kind of reports that we're seeing are, I've seen some Public Records Act requests that have come out of these fusion centers, and you can look at them, and I would say about 80% of them are suspicious-looking Middle Eastern man driving a van, young man wearing baggy pants and a hoodie sweat, you know, exactly what you would expect, basically. These are systems that are basically designed to allow racial profiling. And here in Berkeley, you don't have that anymore. You actually have the reasonable suspicion of criminal activity standard. This is the only community in the country that has that standard. The final thing I'm going to say is that the people who regularly came to the Coalition for Safe Berkeley meetings, it was maybe about 5 or 6 people. And those are the people who got these policies passed. And those are the people who made it so that the average of 2 people a month that were getting deported from Berkeley don't get deported and stay with their family. And these are the people who strengthen the criminal intelligence standards. So my point is, there is a lot that you can do. You don't have to sit down, you don't have to be idle, you don't have to be scared, you can take action, and you don't have to have 100 people. You can have 5 or 6, and you can make a difference.
This is for Dan Ellsberg. This is 10 minutes. Tell us of your experience at the Manning trial and how it compares to your own experience with the Pentagon Papers. And also, how does the prosecution of national security whistleblowers affect our relationship to government and our civil liberties?
Okay, thank you. Good to be here amongst my family, my community. It just occurred to me, not so many people here have probably ever seen me in a suit and tie before, unless you were arrested with me. Actually, how many people here have been arrested with me? Can I see? Well, it's not too late. You'll have your chance. When it comes to dress here, my wife Patricia and I have been discussing what we'll wear for the Gay Pride Parade this year. We'll pink buttons here occasionally. You're all invited. There's cards out there for to join the contingent for the People's Grand Marshal, San Francisco, Bradley Manning, the LGBTQ. I was just told that while I was at his trial last week, that the Gay Pride Board Committee met again and again confirmed their rescission of his election as Grand Marshal, which shows, I'm sorry to say, that it's not enough to be gay, apparently. Just as San Francisco's own Dianne Feinstein shows that it's not enough to be a woman. She's the chairman, she's still the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, who just pronounced Snowden as a traitor, as she certainly would have called me if Pentagon Papers came out at this point. And then Snowden, of course, fortunately has shown that to show real civil courage and benefit your country at great personal cost, it's not necessary to be gay. He's even a recovering white male straight person like myself. And somebody can really make me proud again to be an American, which hasn't always been easy in the last dozen years. And these are people, Brad Manning, people here, and most of the people, all of the people in this audience, let's say, show that. Now, at the Bradley Manning trial, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to speak to Bradley Manning because when I was last there at a pretrial hearing, at a break when the lawyers were all in their secret session, which happens constantly at that trial, what amounts virtually to a secret trial, I went up to him and tapped his chair and said, "Hi, Bradley, I'm Dan Ellsberg." And before he could turn around, I was yanked out of the courtroom by two big guards. And the head of security of the base, they were going to throw me off the base, and said, it's against the rules to talk to the defendant. I said, really, where are those rules? He said, well, they're posted right there on that big board. There are about 14 rules, no smoking marijuana in court. And they were very comprehensive, but I didn't see anything about speaking to the defendant, I said, pointed out. He said, well, it's implicit. Like the secret laws that the FISA court, rules, secret interpretations and all that, secret rulings. And actually I said, implicit, I was on trial facing the exact same charges as Bradley Manning, on and off for 2 years, and people spoke to me all the time. He said, the fact is there are people who don't like Bradley Manning. And I said, well, I hate to say it, but there really are people who don't like me. And obviously, I'm sure Dianne Feinstein, and not only John Boehner, is one of those. The fact is, a lot of people, I was just told out here, a lot of people are saying, why should I care about their listening to everything that I do, say, where I am? Total coordinates on everything. I have nothing to hide, is the answer. Really, a lot of people do say that. And first they say, as long as it's used only to catch terrorists. Well, our Constitution was not written to be executed by angels, actually, and to give any humans, whether they're Republican or Democrat or third party or whoever, fat chance. But that kind of power, that kind of knowledge to blackmail every individual in the country who has, as somebody, William Binney put it, 280 million Americans, everybody who isn't in a hospice or an infant, who deals with any kind of electronic equipment, whatever now, is totally lacks privacy altogether. Okay, the question is, so what? Here's the answer. If you want to know the answer, what it means to live like in a country like that, which is our country now, look at the film I mentioned earlier, The Lives of Others, which really should be done now, about the DDR. And something I want to point out to you in that film, if you see it again, get it from Netflix, and you'll see it, is the use that's made of this kind of information. It doesn't have to be somebody, the use is not made just on somebody who is already or might be a suspect or a dissenter. In fact, they were trying to wiretap the hero of that film, who was very pro-East Germany, socialist, very fond of the regime, but he had a girlfriend that was coveted by the human district policeman, so forth. So they're trying to put him out of the way. They wire up his apartment, and the process is seen by a neighbor. And when the wiring up is done, she opens her door and closes it. The head of the police contingent goes to her door, knocks on it, and says, "Your daughter," he knows who she is, "your daughter wants to go to medical school, right?" Not going to happen if you talk about what you've just seen. And a little later, she's helping, actually, the hero, who is a dramatist type, tie his tie, didn't know how to tie a tie. And she ties his tie and she doesn't tell him. And eventually it turns out that his lover, who's an actress, has been told by the secret police, who covers her, that actually, if she ever wants to act again, ever wants to be on the stage again, she will be an informant, telling them the information that's not electronic, not written down, in bed, in the bathroom, in the fields where they happen to be walking, whatever, and she does. and commit suicide. What I'm saying in the end, when she's found out, what I'm saying is that this kind of information in the hands of our government, where it is right now, not only applies to every journalist, every source, every congressperson, everyone like